Hey everybody, today I'm going to be explaining how greetings and topics work in the Morrowind construction set. The reason I'm doing this is because it took me a long time to figure this out, and I feel like I need my brain to explain it to my brain in the future because I'm already forgetting what I did, and it's been less than 48 hours, so I need this video for personal reference. So, what is different about this game compared to the other games in the Elder Scrolls that come after Oblivion Skyrim is that it's a topic based dialogue system. And basically, what that means is when you are engaging in dialogue with NPCs, you need topics to talk to them about, just like an everyday conversation. So, just like in real life, if I'm talking to you and I say, hello, I went to McDonald's, you're going to say, hey, what did you eat at McDonald's? So it's very much a system that's based on everyday language and everyday speaking. But the caveat to that is it's just as complicated as everyday speaking when you actually get in the constructed set. So what we need to establish first is that I need to greet you, or rather, an NPC would have to greet you and introduce this topic to you, or else you don't know to talk about it. So that is why I have this window up here. This is Tamriel Rebuilt. It'll be in the description. And they explain the different types of greetings that are programmed into the game. So every greeting that is going to introduce a topic will fall into one of these 9 categories. Sometimes you might discover a topic through a book, that's something different, but we're just talking about dialogue today. So, how this works is that it's a top down system. So, when we start at the top here, this is the top. 0 is the top, and it goes down. So, if you want something to be, as they put it, absolute priority, you will put it in greeting 0. Sometimes these dialogues are not necessarily going to introduce a topic to you. For example, they say 0 includes crime greetings. So if you get stopped by a guard for committing crime, obviously you're not gonna be having a conversation with the guard. So that's just the way that it's stacked in the actual system that executes the dialogue. But what is confusing about this is that when you are constructing your own dialogue, programming rather, you are going to have to figure out where your greeting is going to go. And that can be really tricky. So, most of the time, if you're making a quest, it's going to be go down in 5. So, a lot of tutorials that you will find will tell you how to do it for greeting 5, or rather, quest greeting, which would go under 5. That is a lot different than some of these other greetings. And if you're not looking to do quest specific greetings, you might run into some issues trying to figure out where it goes. So, a couple of these that can be completely just X'd out right away, except for very specific circumstances, are 2 and 3. 2 is vampires. So, you go talk to somebody about doing a quest. Like, let's say you're a Tavani and you do Master Aryan's quest. If you're a vampire, he's gonna see that you're a vampire first before he sees that you're doing a quest for him. That's the priority level. So the priority is top. 2 is on top of 4, or 5, rather, which is the quest greeting. So 2 is more important than 5. It's a little confusing because if you think top down, you might think that the higher the number, the more important, but that's not how this works. So if you're a vampire, all the characters that don't like vampires are gonna say, "Hey, you're ugly vampire, get out of my face," before they say, "Hey, did you get me that whatever potion?" So unless you're a vampire or you're doing something related to vampires, you don't need that. Special treatings for traders of the Morag Tong. Unless you're doing something with the Morag Tong or creatures, you don't need that. Priority quest greetings are force greetings, where it doesn't matter if the player's a vampire. I would assume that this would be something such as like a sleeper, like when the sleepers start finding you at that point in the main quest line, it's a forced greeting. It doesn't matter who you are, that greeting is going to come up. They're gonna talk to you about that. Now, keep this in mind right here. The vow of silence failure must always be at the top. I don't make the rules. These rules are ancient history. It has to be at the top. It's up at the top. Don't move it. And when you go in the construction site, you'll see that. So greeting 0 is absolute priority. When in doubt, use greeting 1 instead. For my particular mod that I'm working on, which is just a test mod, just so I can teach myself how to do this, I couldn't get greeting 1 to work for what I'm doing, and I'll explain that in the next section. But if you can't get greeting 1 to work, greeting 0 is what you're going to go with if you're not doing quests. So if you just say, I want to talk about McDonald's today, but there's no quest about McDonald's, you're going to go with 0. Or I got it to work with 0. I couldn't get it to work with 1 because that's quest greeting, and I'm not doing a quest. So if you just want to have a little chat with an NPC, but they're not doing a quest for you, or you're not doing a quest for them, there's nothing like that there, you're gonna have to go with 0. Close is number 8. Class-based greetings, unique ID greetings, in-game never-ending greetings. I tried this section for my mod that is just a basic conversation mod. It didn't work. Greetings that manage faction mechanics. This one, I think I accidentally put some dialogue, some greetings in here, and that they didn't work. So unless you're gonna be messing with the actual mechanics of the faction, it's not gonna work. Uh, I couldn't get it to work. And then locations at the bottom. Right. One thing that is super confusing about this is how complicated the system actually is. And this Steam post from about 10 years ago, it's 2025 right now, and this is from 2015. This person was confused, and someone explained it in a way that I could understand. I didn't understand it in any other tutorial until I found this reply in this forum. So, this right here, you can pause and read it. I'll try to leave the description down below. I tried to do a Steam link in a different video and it didn't go. YouTube blocked it for whatever reason. So I'm not sure if it'll actually be in the description. It just depends on if YouTube will let me. But if not, I'm just gonna leave this here. I tried to make it really big so you can see. And I'll make it even bigger right here. And just read this. And this person explains it perfectly. So just pause this and read it. And there's one thing about greeting 0 that I noticed that I'll explain a little later. This person explains the same thing with this paragraph that's on the Temporary Rebuild. But this is super helpful. This explained everything to me. It just clicked in my head. So just take a look at that. And we'll go into the construction set next and actually implement this information. All right, hey everybody. So now we're in the construction set. First thing we're going to do after you load in your files is go over to the speech bubble and open it up. If you don't know how to load in your files, I have a video that explains that. My playlist will be in the description. Go to the video that says how to install the Morrowind construction set, and that'll explain to you how to load in your files. As you can see, these are all the topics on the left hand side that can be discussed in the game. Everything is right here. Now, not every NPC talks about every topic, so it just depends on the topic. Some are just generic, such as Solstein. A lot of NPCs talk about Solstein and they all say the same thing. But there are other topics that are more specific to certain people. For example, I will show you one that is specific. If we can find it in a timely manner, as this is an ABC order. And when you add a topic, it will be placed in ABC order. For example, we have Balladass. The topic of Balladass is only given to certain people. And notice this little asterisk next to his name in the topic column. I have edited this topic. And whenever you edit a topic, or you add to it, or even if you take away, this asterisk will stay there. So if I go into this topic and I add something, and then I say, wait, I don't want that anymore, and I delete it, the asterisk will stay there. That's just what I have observed. I don't know if it's like that forever and ever, but I have noticed that. As you can see, all of these have an asterisk next to them, even though I haven't edited them all. I'm not sure what the actual mechanics of that is, but just know that if you're looking for your topic, look for the asterisks. It'll make it a lot faster. So I have edited topics that already exist in the vanilla. Now, I would recommend adding topics first, and we're going to get to that, but just because we're learning how this works, I'll show you one that's already familiar. So this topic, you see right here, these IDs, these are who can talk about these topics. So for example, we have Aryan, Balladass is a reclusive member. You can keep asking him questions about Balladass. This is in the base game. Now this one, his support on the council will be useful to us. He knows well that the traditionalists are what stand in the way of progress. This part right here, his support on the council will be of use to us. That's vanilla dialogue. The second sentence, I added that because my test mod, as you can see in the top here, is called Tavani Politics. So my whole practice mod that I'm making is just dialogue surrounding the politics of House Tavani. Will I make this public? I don't know. If I do put it on Nexus, it will just be for my personal archival purposes so I don't lose it. Whenever I get new computers or what have you, it'll be somewhere safe. But I'm not sure that this will ever be at the level of uh, sharing with the world. I will probably have a disclaimer on it that says, a noob made this, download at your own risk. So, this one at the top is one that I added. Now, when you ask Balladass about Balladass, he says this, speaking, hurry up. It does not matter what your disposition level with him is, he will always say this. So I thought, well, that's kind of weird. If I'm your friend, are you going to say that to me? Who knows? But in my world, he's not going to say that to you. So if you have a disposition of 80, he's going to say something different. And this is where we get new topics within topics. So I have a topic here, and when you add a topic, you just go down here, click new, and we're going to do this later in the video, but I'm just explaining this first. And if you want to skip ahead to that part of the video, you can go ahead and do that, but I'm just explaining right now how this dialogue system works. So once you get topics, you can introduce topics within topics. But in order to introduce that initial topic, the easiest way to do it is in the greeting. But if you don't want to mess with greetings, you can introduce topics within topics. And that is what I've done with this dialogue here about Balladas. So when you ask Balladas about Balladas and you have a disposition of at least 80, he's going to give you this dialogue right here. And I'll show you this in the actual game at the end of the video. But you can read that. But what you need to do, if you're interested in this, is make sure that at the bottom you tell the system, or rather the program, that you want to add another topic. So at the bottom, you're going to put add topic, which is a console command. Same thing that you would do in the game. If you press that little squiggly line and you want to start typing all these things, you're telling this system what to do. We're just on the other side. We're just on the back end of the same system. So I'll show you that as well. But I also have a tutorial on Morrowind console commands that explains all this in the game. So we're going to tell the game that when Balladass is at disposition 80 and we ask him about himself, it's gonna add the topic Renegade Tavani Wizard. Now, when you add a topic, it adds the topic for everyone that is programmed to speak about that topic. So just because I talked to Balladass about this does not mean that he's the only one that can be talked to about this topic. It is a little confusing, so you don't have to talk to everybody about every topic. And I think in the game we just don't realize that this is happening because we're immersed in the game. But for example, if I talk to random NPC about Solstein, all of a sudden I can talk to everyone about Solstein. It's kind of like keep in mind, like a regular conversation. If I learn about McDonald's today, I can ask everyone about McDonald's now. So I told the system, add topic, Renegade Tavani was. One more thing that I want to mention before we move on is this section right here, which is the speaker section, or speaker condition, rather. And this is where you tell the game who's going to be talking about this topic, or greeting will work in the same way. And you can also tell it if you need to be in a certain faction to talk about this topic or have it be presented to you, and if you need to be of a certain rank to have this dialogue presented to you. So this dialogue that I added to the Balladass topic, I want players to only see this topic if they are at least at an 80 disposition, in House Tavani, at the rank of mouth or higher. So if those conditions are not met, he will just revert to defaults, which is speaking hurry up. So as long as the player meets the conditions that I have set, which is House Tovani, mouth, rank, or higher with a disposition of 80 with Balladass, they will get this dialogue. Now I have put the dialogue at the top because remember, this is a top-down system, and I'm going to make the assumption here that this also applies to the topic area, which I believe when I had speaking hurry up on top, it did not trigger when I did some playtesting. Maybe I'm just dumb, but from what I've noticed, top down, what you want, prioritize goes on top. And because the ID is badass, the rest of these are not affected by that. But I want anyone who meets these conditions to see this dialogue. All right, everybody, we're in the next section, which is the topic that I added, which was Renegade Tabani Wizard. This is the topic that was introduced within the topic, as we saw in the previous section. So I'm going to show you how I programmed this. And then after this, we're going to do an example ourselves and step by step. So here's our example, and then we'll implement what we've learned in the final part. This is still about us talking. So once the conditions of the introductory dialogue are met, this dialogue shows up. And it'll be easier to see once we get in the game at the end. But I don't have any speaker conditions down here because this topic is within a topic. And in order to access this, you have to meet the conditions of the other topic. So I don't have anything down here. I haven't run into any problems with this yet, but this is how I've gotten it to work. So this is the second topic. Like a little, if we're looking at an onion with layers, this is the second layer. And this is the dialogue that I've added. You can read that. We'll read it in the game, but I want you to focus on this down here for the tutorial. You see how I put choice. So this conversation that we're having with Balance is full of two different choices because we're having a conversation with him. It's not just the dialogue one-sided. And I have two choices here. One choice is, do you think Gothrin is still watching you? And you see how here there is a one at the end. This one comes on top. So when I am talking about us and he says his piece, this is the first option that I see. So whatever you want the player to see first when they're scrolling through that text box, put it with choice, parentheses, whatever you want the player to see, and then one. And then choice two goes under choice one. I don't think Gotham cares about you anymore. And you see that these are on top of the initiating dialogue. So anything that's going to initiate choices, put it at the bottom. We want our choices to be on top. And the easiest way to see this is if you go over here to the variables part of the spreadsheet, a little spreadsheet we have here. You see choice right here. So always put your choices on top. So when you look over here, we don't want this part to be on top. Just make sure that if it's blank right here, put it at the bottom. I'm not sure how this would work if you're going really complicated, but for our simple purposes, this is how it should be. So I can go up here. This is choice one, as you can see over here, function. I'm telling the system, program, whatever, that this is what's going to show up if they click one over here. So choice one, do you think Gothra is still watching you? I know it to be so because I put function choice one. So you go down here, you click, you have a bunch of options, go to function, go to choice, put one. Same thing for choice two. Function choice two. I put one on top of two in this part right here. I don't know if it matters, but I always do it just because I want everything to be, tidy. But once that's done, you're done. And this will show up in the game, and you'll have the topic within the topic. And this will work the same if you get the topic introduced to you through a greeting, because once we leave that greeting area, you come back over here. So anything that is going to be talked about like this is going to follow these steps. So now that I've shown you an example, we're gonna actually do it ourselves and do it step by step. For everybody, now that we have looked at a few examples, we're going to try it out ourselves step by step. Now, let's keep in mind what I mentioned at the beginning of the video about greetings. If you need a refresher, got timestamps. But we are going to do greeting 0 for this because that's what I have gotten to work for my needs and my purpose with my mod specifically. So we're just going to be working with greeting 0 for now in this video. Greeting 0, as I mentioned before, is a little specific in that it does override everything else. As you can see up here, you've got your you violated the law, your crime greetings, and these two greetings at the bottom I added myself. Now, because I placed them in greeting 0, they're not quest greetings, so they don't work there. They actually override everything else because remember, we have a top-down system. So when I put something in greeting 0, the system of the program will scan everything and find the greeting that matches all the conditions. And whichever one matches all the conditions in the highest tier gets priority, which is what that Steam comment explained. So if you want to go back and take a look at that Steam comment, that one explains a lot better than I can. And that we're looking at a stack, and whoever's on top of the stack is going to get priority. But that does mean when I log on to the game, these greetings that I put in greeting 0 come up first. And they override quest greetings. I've done some testing with this. For example, I added this greeting to Aryan, and he will say this no matter what. Even if I have a quest initiated with him, you can still end the quest. You just have to ask him about it through the chore topic, or I think that's what it's called, chore topic. But there's a topic that's associated with the quest, and then you end the quest that way. But I also have this greeting. So the first greeting here, I did the same thing I showed you with the ballad ass, as I added a couple topics with this greeting. And this greeting has a rank condition with it. So what I have learned through my own experimentation is that if you want a rank specific greeting, it needs to go on top. For for example, I have Aryan saying hello. Can I tell you anything about our house? This doesn't have a rank associated with it, so he will always greet the player with this until they reach the rank of wizard, and then he will greet the player differently. Now, because I wanted a specific greeting for the rank of wizard, I had to put it on top. And of course, I told the game and the speaker conditions that these conditions must be met for this dialogue to come up. So just keep that in mind. If you want a character to have multiple greetings and they're associated with rank, so let's say every time I rank up with Orion, he has a different greeting. I have to put those one on top of the other, on top of the other, and make sure that they mimic the rank in the game. So if I have Master, Master goes on top of Wizard, and Wizard goes on top of Mouth. I think that's the way it goes. And check the Outer Scrolls pages for the ranks and just rank it like that. Because if I don't have this rank, like if I have the wizard greeting underneath the generic greeting, this greeting takes priority because it's on top. Remember, top down. So I don't have a PC rank associated with this greeting. It's just a greeting for anybody. So if I don't have, if that rank condition is not met, it scans the stack. It says, look, I have these greetings here, and the player doesn't meet the rank conditions for these other greetings, so I'm going to go with this generic greeting that can be associated with anybody. that is in House of Ani. It's going to go with that. So just keep that in mind if you want to have multiple greetings that are associated with rank. All right, everybody, now that we have explained everything, let's get started and do this step by step. Finally, I have a text document here that has all the dialogue that I've written out. So we're going to take some dialogue for Gothran. I put their pictures in here, that just makes it easier for me to find everything. But I'm going to scroll down here to Gothran, and we're going to use Gothran as our teaching example. You know, the doing part of the lesson. And I have a greeting written out for him, and we're going to put it in the game, and we're going to add these topics. As you can see here, I also have written him some dialogue for topics that are introduced from other characters. For example, the Renegade Tabani Wizard, Baladas introduces the player to that topic, but Gothrin can also talk about it. Now, keep in mind what I mentioned before. You have to be introduced to the topic, and the only way to get introduced to this topic is through Validas. So if you want Gothrin to talk about the Renegade Tavani Wizard, you have to talk to Validas about it first. A little confusing, but you just have to learn about the subject matter first, which for some things that are broad, like Solstein, that's easy. But if it's very specific, such as this mod, which is about House Stevani specifically, certain people are going to say certain things, and that's how you're going to learn what to talk about. Anyways, let's start with our greeting. I'm going to copy this greeting, and we'll see it in the game. But if you can read it, go ahead. And we're going to go down here. I like to be at the bottom because the greetings, for whatever reason, are not ABC order like the topics are. So you'll see that when we add our topic, it'll get categorized in alphabetical order. But for now, let's just go to new. And we're going to just paste what I wrote in my text document right into the dialogue system. So we need to make sure that we tell it that we want Gothrin to be the speaker. Let's go down here and say House Tovani is what faction the player needs to be a part of. And we're not going to give it a rank. So if anyone of House Tovani comes in and they talk to Gothrin, they're going to get this greeting. And like I said before, like if you want to add greetings by rank, we will take those steps later on. But for now, anybody that's in House Tovani that walks up to Gothrin is going to get this greeting. But there is going to be a result of this greeting. If you don't want a greeting to have a topic associated with it, you leave this blank. You can do other things with this result box, such as items and things like that, but that's a different story for a different day. But for now, we're just focusing on dialogue. And when we when we want a topic to be introduced through a greeting, we're going to tell the game with our little command down here, which is the same as a console command, add topic. Put it in quotations, traditionalist approach. So I'm going to add the topic of traditionalist approach. And the game is going to see that. So when we log in, this this section right here, these two words right here will be highlighted. Right, now that we have established our greeting, we're going to add the topic. So we're going to go over here, we're going to click new, and we're going to type in the name of our topic that will come up on the list. Remember, this will be in ABC order, and I'll have an asterisk next to it. And be careful, because if you make a typo in here, when the game scans for the topic and when you're playing, it might not see it. And I did make a typo the first time I ever added a topic. And the game had an error that said it could not find script 1 or something like that. So if you get that error first thing to check is to make sure that the topic name in the list matches the result box and matches what's in your dialogue. So just make sure everything matches. I know it's easy to make typos here because it's small text and we don't have spell check. So just make sure that everything looks the way it should. So now I'm gonna click enter, and it got put in its proper place with an asterisk. I'm gonna go over here and I'm going to copy what I've written. And this is easy if you just write everything out beforehand, just copy paste it all in. I'm gonna click new, paste. Now it's the same system as before with the greeting. I'm gonna tell the game. Gothran is the one that's gonna say this. I want the player to be in Tavani, and I don't want a rank associated with this because this is the section, or the response rather, to the greeting that I established earlier. So I want this greeting to come up. You could get a little more complicated and say, if you're this rank, he'll say this. If you're that rank, he'll say that. Disposition, all those things. And I'll show you a little more of a complex example in a second. But for our very basic purposes, this is the result of the greeting. We establish the topic, and this is the topic. And this is what Gothran's going to say. But now keep in mind that if I want another NPC to talk about this topic, even though Gothran introduces us to the topic, other people can say things about it. So let's go back down to my document here and let's pick another character and let's give them dialogue for the traditionalist approach. So let's go down to Balladass, and I have some dialogue for Balladass. He's gonna have his own thoughts about the traditionalist approach. So I'm just gonna copy it. Same thing again. Click new. Paste in what you've got. We're gonna do the ID again. Do the faction again. And that's it. If you want a rank associated with this and a disposition, have at it. Let's do one more. Just one more. So we really know what we're doing. We'll go up here to Aryan. Aryan's going to have something to say about the traditionalist approach too. And you'll notice that they all have something different to say. And sometimes it's a little snarky, sometimes it's not. And when you're putting in dialogue, you can do whatever you want. That's a part of the fun. So one more time, we go down here, click paste. Aryan's going to be the speaker for this one. PC faction Tovani. And there you go, that's it. Alright, one more little more advanced example before we go into the game. As I mentioned before, if you want to get a little more complex with your dialogue and what players and NPCs will say to each other, we can set certain conditions for greetings and their associated topics. So, as I showed you earlier, I have this topic. Rather, the greeting introduces a topic, but the greeting can only be accessed by a wizard rank member of House Savani. So when you're a wizard and you go talk to Aryan, he's going to say, perhaps you are wondering about the fate of House Savani. And at the bottom it says, add topic, fate of House Savani. So if I go back over to topic and I try to find it in a timely fashion, because the filter button is a little hard to use. We have the fate of House Savani. I added this topic before. As you can see, there's different people that can talk about this, but Aryan is the one that's going to tell us about it. If I click on this, his response for the fate of House Savani has a condition set with it, is that you have to be disposition 80 and at least a spell rate, which I made a mistake on that. When I first did this section of my mod, I was learning how to do it, and I set it to spell rate, but then I changed my mind. I want it to be a wizard, so I went ahead and changed that, make sure it all matches. It still worked anyway, because spell rate is underneath wizard, but that wouldn't work if I had accidentally picked a rank that's above wizard, so just make sure it all matches. So for this greeting, the greeting that introduced us to this topic, this response has choices, just like the other one did with Balladass. So you can ask him these questions down here, and he has his responses. Keep in mind the choices are on top. And Balladass has his own thing to say, but that's below Aryan's. And you have to have a disposition of at least 80 to have this conversation with him. I will probably program a response that is for disposition under 80, but that's not here yet. But as you can see, this is the result of having a greeting and then a more advanced condition associated with the greeting and the topic that comes with the greeting.
May I
Hey
help
everybody,
you?
we're in front of Gothrin, so let's see what he has to say. Yes, I am Archmaster Magister Gothrin of House Tavani. I have several matters to tend to, so make your inquiry quick. So as you can see, our modding works. Everything that we told the game so far is here. Our traditionalist approach is being threatened, so the topic of traditional approach that we added is present. And make sure to check periodically that things are popping up as they should. So as you can see, we have our topics here, and let's go talk to the other characters and see what they have to say.
They have your attention.
Here we are at Master Aryan, and as you can see, he has also the topic of the traditionalist approach. We had to talk to Gotham first, and since we talked to Gotham and he introduced us to this topic, we can now talk to everyone about this topic. So he's got his own opinion on the traditionalist approach, and as you can see, my other custom topics are here, such as Tavani politics and Tavani customs. These are all custom dialogues that I added, as you saw in our lesson, as well as Balladass. I edited the vanilla reply about Balladass. The first sentence is vanilla, the second sentence I added, as well as the fate of House Tavani. As you can see, he already has this topic here because my conditions have been met that I set in the construction set. And we can talk to him about that all day long and have a good time with it. So we'll talk to Balladass and then we'll be done. So here we are, Balladass, and let's talk to him and see what he has to say. So as I showed you before in our little lesson, I edited his vanilla topic, whereas before he would just say, "Hurry up, I don't want to talk to you." We have a 100 disposition with him, so he will be more open to talking to us now. So now he will tell us about himself. He is a renegade Tabani wizard, and as you can see, even though I added this dialogue, it recognizes the other topics that are present in that list. So even though I didn't add the Nisus dialogue, it sees everything that's in that list. If the keywords match, then it'll be highlighted. So we can talk to him about Renegade Tavani Wizards, and once we talk to him about that, we can go talk to Gothrin, talk to Aryan, talk to whoever we tell the construction set to have dialogue about that topic. So everything is here. We're in the front end now, where before we were in the back end, and everything is working great. So we have down here, it can get a little cluttered, but there are mods that help manage the dialogue system. So we have our Fate of House Tavani and Renegade Tavani Wizard. And we also have Traditionalist Approach. He's got his own opinions on the Traditionalist Approach because we gave him those dialogues. So that's about all. We did a successful greeting and dialogue mod. And I hope that this was helpful. And it's certainly helpful to me because I sat here for maybe 2 hours, 2.5 hours the other day, and really taught myself how to do this and found some good resources that I'll share with you in the description below. So I'll give those resources some
What
appreciation.
was that?
And it really is trial and error. Morrowind does not have the same amount of Baldas. Can you don't interrupt me, please, Baldas, with your mumbling. Anyways, the there's not as many resources out there for more popular games like Skyrim, but they are out there. They're just a little hard to find, and sometimes it's a little confusing. And because it's an older game, you might not always be able to find the uh, the questions that you need answered. It is a little bit of a trial and error. There are some Discord groups out there and stuff too that you can try out. I think Morrowind modding is one of them, but it is a little hard because this game is older and it does have a very complex dialogue system. But once you know it, and it makes engaging with other modding sets easier. So I wanted to make this video for myself because I forget. I don't actually play games and do modding and all that every day. So I have to make myself a little bit of a guidebook so I remember what I'm doing. And I thought that this would be the easiest way to do it. And if anyone else wants to watch this and be helped by it, then that's great. But I've actually had to go back to some of my old videos and see what I did because when I had to set up my Steam Deck again, which different story, but I had to factory reset it, and when I went to mod again, I forgot everything. So I'm just getting ahead of the curve and making sure that I remember what I'm doing for the now and the future. I hope you found this helpful and interesting at the very least. And thanks for watching and see you.